Thank you so much for to the organizers of this conference to invite me here to share my interdisciplinary project. I come from originally the art world as a critic and a curator and also new media artist. And then I got a advanced degrees in philosophy. And it was during this time of getting my advanced degree that I started this project that I'm going to share with you today. My father was a neo-Reichian founder of the human potential movement of the early 1960s. So I grew up with the convergence of science and metaphysics, and my quest has been to carry my father's pioneering work on the Kundalini, which he learned from his master, Swami Muktananda, into the academy. And this has been my journey, first to bring it into the lexicon of the art world, and then finally into the academy. And now through IJRAP, it's published me last year, I'm bringing into the international world of physics. And my research that I was doing for this article last year, I found that the early experiments with electromagnetics had this kind of reverence for the feminine, and they had even like the term for it, electrical woman. So they connected this electromagnetic energy to the feminine, and that's really related, here I show on the right, to this ancient goddess Inanna from Sumer, and she was on the quest for the sacred marriage, and that's my art theory, this hieros gamos, or the sacred marriage. And so I'm taking you on this journey with me. I'm a phenomenologist in the continental philosophical tradition, and phenomenologist means that it's Husserl, who was the teacher of Heidegger, whose big breakthrough of the 20th century was the philosophy of being. So this is phenomenology is what you pick up along the way, the phenomenon that is circling back to your consciousness of this journey. So this is really, it's a Mobius strip process that I'm going to share with you tonight. Tonight, my time, I'm in Montreal. So this is the quest for the third theory. A big breakthrough I had was when I saw this term qualia used in science, and that relates to what I brought into continental philosophy after studying with Jung's disciple, Marie-Louise von Franz, who had this theory of the quality of number versus the quantity of number, and that's how you integrate them. But in the West, these have been separated, which is why we're stuck in the binary. And I related quality of number to the feminine. So this is the 3 stages of quantum proactivity. To make the quantum leap, it's essential that you be proactive. And this is getting into what's become a major discussion in philosophy about time. I have a unique perspective because I come from a background in the occult sciences, specifically astrology, and that's what I'm going to share with you. So thank you for participating in this, bringing astrology into physics. It's been a long time in coming. So so this starts with 3 stages of quantum proactivity. This is what I followed and what I'm sharing with you right now. First, there's recognition, and that's an arrow, an announcement thrown into the direction, and dissemination of the world. And this is a quote by Alain Badiou, an eminent French philosopher who was my teacher, a professor at European Graduate School, was a laboratory that I attended. I'll talk a little bit more in a minute. So the third, so this is what I was declaring was the third, and this comes from my esoteric knowledge, a long time studying the esoterics, and this is known as the Axiom of Maria that was revived by Jung in the 20th century. And it's 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 3, and out of the third comes the 1 is the fourth. And there's the disciples of Jung are very intent on how do we get from the 3 to the 4. 3 is a very dynamic number, and 4 is very stable. And how do you get from this dynamism to the stability? Well, my breakthrough was the Yod. The Yod is a system in many esoteric, in much esoteric thought, specifically astrology, uses this configuration. It's very alchemical for transformation, and it's really related a lot to synchronicities. So in 1997, I had a breakthrough that I was reading Eliade had a formula for sacred reality, and that was force, duration, and effectiveness. And I put these into the Yod, force being the masculine and duration and effectiveness or qualities of the feminine. So putting them together at D, you see the center, that's the structure of the atom, the sixfold structure. And that's where you get the quantum leap. And then you get straight to the horizon. And that's the event horizon, you know, that is like very much talked about in popular physics that I'll be talking about in a minute. So this was the laboratory was started by Wolfgang Schirmacher, and his theory was the homogenerator. So this is the quantum figure of the leap from the third dynamism to the fourth formalism. And I very much followed this. And this is how I created this theory about his work in terms of the 3 and the 4, because I followed this process. And in writing this article for this conference, I really could make these connections. You see in this chart above that Alan Badiou, what I just explained, was the arrow thrown into the world, and the Schirmacher homogenerator is the quanta, the proactive leading to entanglement. And then his disciple, the Badiou's disciple, Di Nicola, had a threefold theory for determining whether it really is an event, and that's calling, naming, and fidelity. So these are all interconnected again with the 3, which reinforces the 3rd, which is the leap beyond the binary. And so this, Dr. Schirmacher created this laboratory, and it really was an antidote to this tradition of the Western genius as being isolated and alone, because this was a collaborative laboratory that existed for almost 20 years. It started in 1998. And when I went in 2014, it was culminating, and I was able to chronicle what I called the Sassfi philosophy, which was, which I call conversion. And that again relates to an alchemical kind of transformation. But the Sassfi, the homogenerator incubator for the quantum leap, basically. And this is what I declared, because I was writing for Huffington Post at the time. So I declared this event in Huffington Post. I didn't call it an event. I called it the revolution, the Schirmacher revolution. But what happened is, you see at the bottom here is the Steinmat, it's a circular auditorium, which is very innovative. A revolution from the phallic clock tower. So we're getting into the idea of the cyclical. And you see, this is Badiou's diagram about the event, again, working with the cycle, the cyclical. And so this was 3 philosophers from different disciplines that all came up with an idea of the 3rd, and it all happened in synchronicity. First, Badiou gave his talk on the event, and then one philosopher after another gave this their interpretation of the 3rd, not knowing that the others were doing the same thing. So this is what I call an event. 3 philosophers was Graham Harman, which is metaphysics, Gert Lovink, which was he was a philosopher of the cyberspace, and Michael Hart Antonio Negri was a collaboration on political science. Their 3rd was this 3rd entity they created by collaborating together. Gert Loving called it the Web 3.0. He had a term for it called the logic of the image, which to me was bringing together the right and left brain into this 3rd entity of the eros gamos. And Graham Harman had the 3rd table. So this was published in on 9/9/2014, and then this was also, I did screen grabs and put them in a text I was publishing through the School Press of the book was called Hermeneutics of New Modernism. It was my graduate thesis. And then I created a blog, and that blog was initiated by declaring the event. You can see this is a screen grab here. And that really was something I continued for the next That was in 2014, so we're talking about the next 7 years. I didn't realize that this was going to be this involved process, that I had to be totally dedicated to finding one step after another, and that would then declare that it was an event. According to De Nicola, you have to have the fidelity. So this was, so the timing, I timed it with astrology. And this is what you can do with astrology. It's being done. It's certainly not something being discussed in science of physics or the academy, but this is being done, of course, all the time, that people are using astrology to declare their own personal event, whether it be a wedding or, you know, any kind of event you want to have in your life, to set it up astrologically. So I set it up. The event was the actual publishing of this revolution of the third. And this shows the quantum leap going from Uranos and Chronos into kairos. This is the Greek thought of Uranos is totally related to astrology, which I'll get to in a little bit. So that led me into, okay, what's next? This was all about a leap into uncertainty and just whatever came up. So I was in Berlin and I had a dream of red shoes. I was preparing for a trip and packing, and there was a pair of red shoes that I left out. I left out of the packing of my clothes for storage, and it was to take with me. And then I found this pair of authentic red Playboy bunny slippers in a consignment shop in my neighborhood. And so they were placed in my bag to Cyprus. And this was the last movement of the art world in 2015 called Speculative Object. So this was my speculative object, was these red Playboy bunny slippers. So I took them around Cyprus, started off with the Greek Cyprus and northern Cyprus, and I made these kind of installations with taking photographs, and it was the idea of the original sacred marriage ceremonies were practiced in Cyprus, which is why Paul chose Cyprus as his first mission outside of the Levant. And here you see in the up here is a billboard of his first baptism that I made into this kind of collage. So it was like intent to repress, to eradicate this ancient religion of the sacred marriage, which was centered in Cyprus, I discovered. And that's, first it was the Greeks that repressed it, and then Christianity as well. And what they were doing is really repressing this Kundalini energy, the feminine. It was just too powerful for the Greeks to deal with. And then Christianity also didn't want to take away that power from their priests. So that's why it continued this repression on the island. All right, so then I got into the creative phase and I started this project, which was just, it was a book I was writing called Missing James Franco 3.0, and that I was creating these stickers and placed them around on my journeys. And then I would, companies sponsored these blog posts. I created this, you see on the right, I created a blog with this, see all the stickers, and they would pay for, if I would, it was a very creative process of incorporating their product or their service into the story of Missing James Franco 3.0, and that's how they funded my journey. So, all right, so then then I went back to Cyprus and I found some transgender archaeology there. And that I was also doing some art practice with the Venus rise in the sign of Aries, and this created the third space between heaven and earth, and that really was then reflected in an archaeology piece that I found that was the third. It was integrating the male and female genitals. I didn't realize that I didn't have a picture of it here, but I started a blog there, Marrying Cyprus, with this project of bringing back the ancient religion of honoring the transits of Venus. And then I ended up In 2018, I came to Montreal and I did an interview with Alan Badu's protege, the eminent global psychiatrist and psychologist. He has a string of degrees, Vincenzo Di Nicola. His dissertation was a breakthrough, trauma and event. It brought the Baduian event into mental health. And his work in his dissertation was formalizing the event through this process of announcement, naming, fidelity that I already talked about. So this was the stage of really getting into a dialectic about the event and about, well, did my fidelity, did that amount to, was this really an event? I mean, this was the open question. My next opportunity came when MIT Media and Transition, it was 10 years after this conference was first held. They initiated again 10 years later in 2019, and that's what I presented, my revisioning of Di Nicola's dissertation, Trauma and Event as Trauma versus Event. That there's a rupture at the crossroads. You identify either with event or trauma, and that by identifying with event, you are having to leap into uncertainty, but through that fidelity, you can finally come to a new plateau, I would say. And so at the same, this was the same conference that they provided an opportunity to show this work that I did with the quantum, I called it now the quantum object, I formalized it. This is at the MIT List Center. They had a playtime, was the night before the conference, and then you were able to show your work. So there was me at the table showing these speculative objects. By that time, I had found a black shoe, a black stiletto that sort of was a companion to the red stilettos, and it had slut written inside. This was in my neighborhood of Gay Village in Montreal. So I did a series with those, with that shoe. So that was the dark side of the feminine, whereas the erotic light side was the Playboy bunny, and bringing those together was a form of convergence for me. So this was the quantum leap here that you see, that the force was taking this erotic energy, making this project, and then creating this marrying Cyprus, because I spent a lot of time in North Cyprus, which is Turkish ruled, and they're much more, they much more keep these ancient traditions of Venus in the Turkish side. So I was working at bringing these together into the eros gamos. It's a Greek term, but that's what's ironic, that the Greek invasion of Cyprus actually eradicated this ancient religion of the eros gamos. So this was taking this yod, and there it is. There's the figure that I discovered it in the museum, and it's not known at all. I've never seen it in a book. Her name is Lady of Lemba, and there she is. She's got the phallus and the uterus. She's got the masculine and feminine combined. So this was my kairos leap into the eros gamos through this work. I just put it all on a graphic there. And so this brought me to the end of 2020, and a new uncertainty. A Facebook friend from New Delhi that's a mystic and an artist, and I said, why don't you create a meme of Kali, of the Kundalini? And he created this amazing meme, you see it in the right, and I put it through my social media, and she became this really totem for this project that I started in just the next month, because I found this is what I put out through my social media, this incredible meme. And then I started this project, Fortnight of Quantum Change, here. And this was based on this work of God, he's an entrepreneur, but his David Leong did this breakthrough with the I Ching, that you could actually track the wave collapse with the I Ching. And we started a dialogue at the end of December. And by January, I put this into a project. It was a 2-week project, starting with the new moon when I posted that meme. And my first question, it was 13th of January, should I leave Facebook? And the answer I got from the I Ching was yes. So I left Facebook, and that was the huge leap that sent me on to where I am today. So this is like Instagram. This shows you this was a screen grab from my Instagram, which shows the different, that every day I would do the I Ching, and then I would do like an art piece. So the one on the upper right, you see that it created all this media. And then I would create this, you see, I used astrology at the same time I was using I Ching. And what happened was incredible, because you could see here in this chart, circled in red, this was when Saturn hit the sun, and it happened to be on my birthday. And it was the day of this anniversary of the hieros gamos, which is January 23rd, 1997. And there you see total wave collapse, because this is the I Ching. Each one is the 64, the diagram. So for each of the 14 days, and it totally collapsed at the same time Saturn was on the sun. So this showed a total convergence of heaven and earth, astrology and the I Ching, and occult science and quantum physics and social media and scientific journal, because here you see in the bottom right, International Journal of Recent Advances in Physics published this work. So this was a convergence of basically this whole 7-year journey. So that was it. Merging was mapping Pauli's quantum wave. That was a project I started in 1997. And every year on the anniversary, that Pauli had a dream on January 23rd, 1938, which happened to be the same day as this Seal of Solomon that was in the sky in January 23rd, 1997. So every year I would do anniversary, I would do a project. Here's something I did in an art gallery under an eclipse that year in 2008. And this, because it was on my birthday, that's why I felt that I was a filter for this, and I had to keep tracking how this energy evolved. So the 2021 was when it actually collapsed. Saturn was on the sun on my birthday. So just to get into the origins of 21st century genius was the shadow assimilation. And that's where I did some correlations between Pauli's dream, which this is in my piece in the journal that was published in August, which his dream in 1938, January 23rd, 1938, was my guide during this whole process. And so that I made these correlations: Kronos, Kairos. Kronos is Saturn in astrology, Kairos is Uranus. And on January 24th, 2021, the sun was conjunct Saturn in the sign of Aquarius. And that was creating these quantum objects, was this project. I created all this media from this project. It could be shown in an art gallery. And this is where you get to what the integration of particle and wave, the wavicle. And this is what Wolfgang Pauli predicted, that when the quantum wave crashed, the Eros Gamos, the 21st century icon, the icon of the age of Aquarius, would arise from under this crashing wave. And this is basically what that project was about. This is how it culminated. I mean, even though with astrology you can look ahead, I didn't realize that was going to happen. And probably it's better that I didn't know, because what can happen, if you know what's going to happen, you can try to organize everything in that way and not just allow yourself be a filter for the unconscious. So this was where I came up with the unified theory of physics, direct from Wolfgang Pauli, the father of modern science, who's known for his exclusion principle. And that's his way of bringing into science a way of getting beyond the duality of the binary system. So Saturn is determinism, that's fate and cosmic timing. Uranus is acausality, that's elective timing, free will. That means, like with astrology, you can choose the chart. So this is how you bring them together as a double rulership of Aquarius. Aquarius is a complex sign because it's ruled by both Saturn and Uranus. So you have determinism and acausality equals the quantum leap. This is really, there's so much talk now about time. even in quantum physics, they're not looking at astrology, and astrology to me has always had the answer to time. It's both causal and acausal, both certainty and uncertainty, with those two rulers of Aquarius. So this brings me back to my origin of declaring a new modernism. Now I'm calling a new quantum modernism, because I was an art critic and I was looking at art that declared a new modernism, which would be defined by this hieros gamos configuration. And that's work I've been doing since 1997, when that configuration happened, January 23rd, 1997. So this goes back to Alan Badu, an arrow thrown into the world. I have 4 minutes left, I see. And so this was, and then this was further work I did last year. Even after this piece was published, a student came to me, who was a 3rd generation astrologer. We went back to Plato, and Plato has these 2 bands of time. And it's so clear that he's talking about astrology. He's talking about the ecliptic and the equator and how they meet, but he doesn't talk about where they meet is at the vertex. And that is a really key point in astrology of timing. And this has been borne out on my journey. And so this is like a new look at Plato, because philosophers aren't looking at Plato's eternal, his theory in terms of astrology, and that's why they don't really understand the theory of the eternal time, and that's what taking back into Nietzsche, because astrology wants it accepted in the academy, in the culture. Basically it was underground, so you couldn't even interpret Plato in terms of astrology, even though that was the religion then, you know, astrology was their mythology. So hieros gamos then brings us to the metaphysical reality of the 3rd. And here we go, Plato's double bands of time. So the ecliptic, he called it the bands, the different versus the same. So the ecliptic versus the celestial equator, acausal versus causal. The celestial equator is where you have the fixed stars, and the ecliptic is where the planets travel. That's where the planets travel. And the planets, because they're the wanderers, they bring in the difference, and the same is the fixed stars. So kairos represents the different, and chronos is the same, and the cyclical versus linear, and then you get to the qualitative versus quantitative. So this is the binary coming together into the 3rd, with just related right back to Plato's cosmology of the soul, which is in Timaeus. He reconciled the opposites through the marriage of kairos and chronos into the universal soul. So this was Pauli and Jung had a unified vision of the hieros gamos as the Aquarian icon. And this is work that was done by a scholar named Remo Roth in Zurich. He was the disciple of Jung's protege, Marie-Louise von Franz, and he interpreted their 30 years of their letters in terms of alchemy. It's a huge breakthrough that hasn't been acknowledged by the academy. Certainly it's something I've been working at bringing into the academy, because the problem is Jung is not accepted by the academy. So you can't really have this whole philosophy enter the academy if it's still repressing Jung. So this is what the struggle that I've had to find a way to bring this into the institutions that have been always rejected the metaphysics of Jung. All right, so the formalization of a 3rd theory of physics is, I'm relating it to a myth, Percival and the yacht, a manifestation of the crossroads. So Percival setting out with his wand, and he's wounded, and he has that choice. He falls unconscious, and he's tended by the maidens. And he has to answer the question of who does the grail serve? And that's where the key is. The grail serves humanity of bringing in the new constellation of energy. In my case, it was serving the event of the 3rd, and that's which the grail itself comprises the 3rd. and the interpretation of the wounded trauma, which was De Nicola's innovation, transformed into knowledge through the quest, equates the grail to the mandala and Mobius strip, gestating the birth of the new. So this is all like bringing these together, all these manifestations, integration, incorporation, manifestation of bodies, deconstruction, replaces. And so this is reclaiming for science. Astrology is the oldest science. Here you have the magnetic attraction of opposites right here in the sun versus the moon and the Venus versus the Mars. And this is the magnetism of opposites right in nature, rotating in cycles, bodies attracting and repelling, positive, negative forces, masculine, feminine polarities. And so this has come into pop culture in a way that I didn't expect. It's called the twin flame movement. It's taking place in cyberspace. And this is kind of, this is right here is like the kind of symbolism they use is combining the figure 8 with the hearts. So you see a lot of swans making double hearts. And this is an international movement that's not even known by like mainstream culture, but I've been participating. I've become a theorist in this movement and done a lot of counseling. And I did it through Quora, this app, and there's my Quora page. So this is like, I just created an alter identity that allowed me to communicate with people on this journey. It's very much the journey to the hieros gamos. And it's got its own language and terminology. So I put a lot of my language and mixed it with their language. And this has come into how we bring the sacred marriage of heaven and earth into the culture. It's happening, you know, even if like the academy's been resistant to it. And so, you know, this is all goes back to the ancient Hindu tradition of yoga, the chakras. This is the new symbolism of the Merkaba here you see on the right. And then, you know, what I did is bringing red and the blue together, you get this kind of brown energy. And that was my last finding. I don't have a picture of it here, but I found a brown shoe. And that to me was the idea of structure and the four and grounding, that I found a brown shoe in the same place that I found this black stiletto. So this is like the repeating the structure of the vacuum. And this is Nassim Haramein, is this pop physicist that's got a lot of videos on YouTube. He's getting more and more accepted in the institution. And so that he totally relates this hieros gamos structure of the double triangle to the whole structure of the vacuum. This is a sculpture by Hermann Gruber that on the structure of the vacuum that I showed in an exhibition. And right here, finally, I have the January 23rd, 1997. It created this perfect six hieros gamos structure in between heaven and earth. So this is where it came in 1997. And now it's been this journey of like interpreting how it's manifesting in the culture. And so this is Mobius strip is becoming like the 21st century icon used in philosophy. And this is my bringing the Mobius strip into this idea of astrosolar kinetics. So this is the part where I trying to get more scientific here. But the sun is the self. That's Jung's term for the hieros gamos, is the self. It's the deepest, most powerful archetype of all. That's the integrated human. And that is where it all comes together. The symbol of the sun, the Aquarian symbol of the waves you see here, and the Mobius strip. So the quantum event creates the phenomenology of the quantum object, the polarity I'm running a little over, so let me wrap it up. The polarity of the chronological linear time of chronos with timelessness is the cyclical time of kairos, represented in the electromagnetic interaction between revolving bodies in the universe. The failure of science technology affected these external cosmic cycles on the human body reflects the failure of physics to encounter the theory of everything. Retrieving this game of chance renders the invisible visible. Reviving the authentic spirit of invention in the experiments on the electric body, celebrating the electric woman as dark matter, is hosting the dynamic interplay of polarities of the 96% universe. I just want to add, all this research on electromagnetics has been repressed in the West. You have to really go to the east to the Russia to find it, because of commercial interests. They were finding that the electromagnetic force has such a disruptive effect on the human body. And of course, the commercial interests didn't want anybody to know that. And that's why these research studies on electromagnetics, they were so repressed. And of course, how could it become a new theory of physics when the studies were not even available? So the eternal search for unity and the quantum simultaneity of past, present, and future results in the succession of synchronicities attracting the father of modern science. This is the de Broglie balance between classical and new physics of Einstein. Creating the theoretical space for the third is the formalization process marrying past, present, and future. So this is where I bring it all together. And causal all together as a third. All these different terms come together in one chart. And that's where Percival makes this union with the grail. The burning grail is the Kundalini that's been repressed. And instead of like falling unconscious and falling straight into being tended by the mains, he goes into his journey into the self. And that's the chart I showed earlier, now made into his destination of the Aquarian self, which is the integration of these opposites reflected in the double rulership of Aquarius, of Kronos, Saturn, and Uranus. So in conclusion, very simple, quantum physics can no longer deny the birth pit of the feminine. So this is images of the black hole, and below is this amazing image of the Mayans. They connected the black hole to the tree of life, and that's the place of life, death, and rebirth. So this is, these ancient peoples had an understanding of this connection that we've lost today, and that's what I wanted to bring to you all. And thank you for participating in this quantum leap.